Hello, and welcome to another session of Excel Programming for Clinicians with me, Dolores Callum. In this session, we will learn how to display messages to our users and how to ask our users questions and get input from them to use later on in our program. We will look first at how to display a standard message box. We will progress from there to looking at different types of message boxes. We will then learn how to respond to a user clicking one of the buttons in our message box. Next, we'll look at how to customize our message box. And finally, we'll take a look at how to get input from our users through the input box for use later on in our program. Let's start by taking a look at how to get a message box, a standard message box, to display. To display a standard message box, we type in the Excel keyword MSGBOX, stands for message box, and then we, in quotation marks, write down what we want to appear in our message box. And that should display a message box with the message that we've typed in quotation marks. Let's run the code and see what we get. And as you can see, it pops up a standard message box with the message we typed in and an OK button. Next, let's take a look at the message box, but with different types of buttons, not just the OK button. If you don't tell Excel which buttons you want to display, by default, it will only display the standard OK button. But you can tell Excel which buttons you want to display. So for the default OK button only, what you do is you put your comma and then you get a list of button types. The one we want is VB OK only. And that will display the standard OK button. Let's run that code and see what we get. And as you can see, it pops up a standard message box with the message we put in and a standard OK button. Let's copy this code, comment it out, and this time, let's change the button and display the VB OK cancel button. So this time, I want to display the OK and cancel buttons. So I'm using VB OK cancel. Let's run the code and take a look at what we get. As you can see, I can get an OK and I get a cancel button. Let's comment out this code and create a different message box. This time, I want to display yes/no buttons. So I use VB yes/no. Let's run that code and see what that looks like. As you can see this time, I have a yes button and I have a no button. Let's comment that out and see what else we can do. Instead of just a yes/no, I might want a yes/no and a cancel button. For that, I use the VB yes/no cancel option. Let's run the code and see what that looks like. Now I have a yes, I have a no, and I have a cancel. Okay, let's take a look at some more options. This time, I want an abort, retry, or ignore button. And for that, I use the VB abort, retry, ignore option. Let's run that code and see what that looks like. abort, retry, ignore. Okay, let's see what else we can do. Sometimes you might just want to display information. So for that, we use the VB information option. Let's see what that looks like. As you can see, we get the information icon, information only, and we get just an OK button. Sometimes we might want something a bit stronger than just basic information. Let's use the VB exclamation. Let's run that and see what that looks like. And we get the warning, the standard warning symbol with our message and an OK button. What if our message is actually critical? Then, in that case, we can use the VB critical option. Let's see what that looks like. Critical. That gives us a quick look at the various ways in which we can customize our message box to display different buttons and different messages. Next, let's take a look at how we work out which button was actually clicked. So if you're only displaying the OK button, then there's only one button to click. But what if you're displaying a yes, no? You've asked the user a question. Do you want to do something, yes or no? Or do you want to abort, retry, or ignore? You need some way of knowing which button the user has clicked. Let's take a look at how to do that. Let's declare a variable to hold the value of whichever button was clicked. Now, before we assign our clicked button a value, let's set a default value to 0. We are now ready to assign a value from the message box. The way we get values back from our message box is to put our prompts and our buttons inside brackets. So the prompt here is click any button. And here I want to use my VB OK button and then close bracket. And because we've put our prompt and our button inside of brackets, message box will return a value which we will assign to our variable. We can then check our variable. If our click button is equal to VB OK, we want to do something, and then we want to end if. And what we want to do is we want to use our range object, select a range, and set its value property to some text. Okay, so we start off with our click button equal to 0. We use our message box to display an OK button. The user clicks on the button, and if the button they clicked on is the OK button, we select range H12 and we assign the text OK was clicked. Let's run the code and see what that looks like. We click the button, we get our message box. Click any button, that should say. We click on OK, and it says OK was clicked. Let's copy this code, comment it out, and see what it would look like with the VB OK cancel options. So now we have OK and cancel. So if OK is clicked, we want to say OK is clicked, but we need an else condition. Else if clicked button is equal to VB cancel, then we want to display a different message. Cancel was clicked. Let's run this code and see what it looks like. We display OK and cancel buttons. If we click on OK, it says OK was clicked. Let's run that again. And if we click on cancel, it says cancel was clicked. Let's copy this code, comment it out, and see what that looks like with yes, no buttons instead of OK, cancel. So instead of OK, cancel, I'm going to use the VB yes, no option. And in this situation, I'm checking VB yes, and I want to say yes was clicked. And then VB no, to say no was clicked. Okay, similar code to before, but now we're checking yes, no instead of OK, cancel. Let's see what that looks like when we run it. We display our yes, no buttons. If I click on yes, yes was clicked. If I run that again and click on no, no was clicked. Let's copy this code, comment it out, and try yes, no, cancel. VB yes, no, and cancel. So the rest of the code looks the same, but we want to add a cancel option. So if click button is equal to VB cancel, then we want to say cancel. Cancel was clicked. Let's run that and see what it looks like. And we can get cancel. Let's try one more example. Using the abort and retry option. So if we click VB abort, you can say abort was clicked. If our user clicks retry, you can say retry was clicked. And if our user clicks ignore, you can say ignore was clicked. Let's run the code and see what that looks like. So if I click on abort, it says abort was clicked. If I run it again and click on retry, retry was clicked. And finally, if I run it again and click on ignore, we get ignore was clicked. So you begin to see how we can ask the user questions, get a value from the user, a decision from the user based on which button they clicked, and then use some of our branching logic, if then else, to switch and run different sets of code depending on the user input. Next, let's take a look at how we can further customize our message box. So if you remember, our standard message box had a prompt, and that prompt is what appears in the text. You then put a button. I just want the OK only. And then finally, you can add a title. I'm going to call I'm going to give mine a title of Gentle Reminder. Let's run the code and see what that gives us. Now you can see we have our message, we have our button, and we have a title. Instead of just saying Excel, it now has the title that we have given it. So those are some of the various ways in which you can use Excel message boxes to display messages to your users and to get input from them. Now, so far, all of the input is based around the user clicking a button. What if we wanted the user to actually enter some text that we could use? That's where the input box comes in. The input box looks similar to the message box, but it returns a value. Let's take a look at how to create an input box. I'm going to declare a variable to hold the value that our user puts into the input box. I can then assign that variable to the Excel keyword input box, and then I open my bracket, and then I put a prompt just like I did in the message box. Hello, what is your name? And then I can give my prompt a title, get patient name, and then I close my bracket. So I've declared a variable, and now I'm assigning that variable to the result of my input box, and my input box returns a result because I've put my prompt in brackets. My prompt is what is your name, and my title is get patient name. Now with that, I can actually use a message box to display the input. So instead of typing in the message, I am using the output from my input name variable. And I'm calling my message box hello. So I've declared a variable. I've assigned that variable to whatever my user puts into my input box, and then I'm taking the results of that and displaying it in a message box. Let's run the code and see what that looks like. So I've got my prompt. It's got a title, get patient name. It gives me a message, hello, what is your name? I type in my name, I click on OK, and my message box displays my message. So you begin to see how we can get an input box, ask the user questions, get the value from the user, and use that value somewhere else in our program. So that was a quick introduction to message boxes and input boxes. We'll make use of them in future lessons. So I hope you found that interesting and useful, and I will see you in the next video.